Good afternoon and welcome to United TV. Today is April 26, 2024. My name is Kemal Erkan. This is our weekly update. As you are familiar with our format, we normally actually give a lot of updates. So Sean, if you want, you can join me. But today, in the last several weeks, we had a lot of guest speakers. We covered a lot of politicians. Last week, our governor, John Carney, was with us. And we have other guests coming, and we are focusing on those so that as the election is coming, so we are able to reach as many people as possible, and then those people, they can find information. And I think that's because of that. We are a little bit behind with our actual work that we have, which is one of them is the RCM updates. RCM is the revenue cycle management, and formerly known as medical billing. That's our core business from the ambulatory and the facilities. So we have been doing that for a long time with Oracle Health. Prior to Oracle, it used to be Cerner, and then Cerner was bought by Oracle a couple of years ago. Now we are under Oracle Health for our services for PM and EMR systems. And United Medical is one of the best implementer of those systems in the power chart setting, in the practice management, which is called in the old setting Millennium. So there's CPM, SPM, and there's nowhere else in the country knows those systems better than us.
Yeah, as well as we do.
So just because we do it every day, and that's kind of part of our core business.
Correct.
So and then part of the RCM services is the different parts of the RCM, how we do certain things, how we approach, and we use this for several different reasons. This platform. Of course, reaching out to potential clients, existing clients, and also sharing some of the knowledge with our employees throughout these. So, Sean, make sure that we share these videos with the employees after it's done, so they're in their own playlist. And today we are gonna cover the collection module of United Medical with Oracle Health, and one of my associate directors, Muriel Campus, is going to join me. Muriel.
Hi, Kemal. Thank you
Hey,
for
Muriel,
having
how are you
me.
doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I give you a really good introduction, so you should
Yeah.
be in good mood now.
Yeah. Not nervous at all.
So, Muriel, we are going to do the collection module, and before that, I want to make sure that people understand your. This is one of your responsibilities, but this is one of your many responsibilities. So you are overseeing with the team that you have, our RCM teams, and that's our core business. So if you want to just give a quick background on you, and then we can start your presentation after that.
Sure, no problem. So, my name is Muriel Campos. I'm one of the associate directors here at United Medical. I've been with United Medical for a long time now. Definitely over 10 years. I stopped counting after a while. But yes, I do have a couple of client managers that I supervise from the AR side, and then I also oversee the collections team, and I also co-manage the payment posting team with our other associate director. So I do have a couple different hats at United Medical, but it's always fun. It's always interesting.
It's good to have you. So we can start with the collection module. Collection is part of the process that we go through. United Medical is not a collection agency, but we do have third-party companies that we have agreements with. The work, the presentation that we are going to share is the pre-collection process. So before we turn anyone into collection, what process we go through and what we expect from our clients, and why collection is extremely important for the flow of the patient and then accurate account balances. So now, Muriel, we are with you now.
Okay, I can share my presentation. Okay, so I just put a couple slides just to kind of summarize the process and the workflow that the collections team members go through. So right here, I just kind of created a little wheel of some of the main points. So basically, for the collections team workflow, one of the first steps is, of course, generating a report on the overdue patient balances. That information is pulled from the practice management systems. So we have SPM and CPM. And then after that, it is transferred into our main hub, our QuickBase, where we pull all information, we work all the information from there. And then what the team goes through is kind of what we call a pre-work process. So during that process, they verify statements, the appropriate amount of statements were sent. They verify to make sure it's not, there's no insurance related issues. There's like no special messages or alerts that maybe the offices have put in for us. They're not Medicaid patients, active Medicaid patients for those balances and dates of services. So kind of those preliminary reviews that the team members do. Once they go through that, we then send the list of eligible accounts over to the clients. The clients review it and they send back their reports to us with the accounts that they do approve to go to the collection agencies. Once we get that back, then the files are actually transferred over to the collection agency. So in this one, I kind of already went over it, but what the pre-work process is. So again, just making sure the appropriate amount of statements were received and sent. There's like no special issues or circumstances on the accounts. They're not active Medicaid patients for those dates of services and balances. When the accounts are ready to be transferred to the collection agencies, so at that point, we've already received the approvals from the clients. What the team will do is they'll make collections transfer adjustments in the practice management systems. And that's really to indicate that those balances are now with the responsibility of the agency. Along with that, we also add alerts on the accounts saying that so-and-so balance has been sent to the agency. This is the number for the collection agency that if the patient ends up calling us or the clients, they have that information there readily available. And then also, like I said, all the approved accounts are sent to the collection agency for further processing, and then the collection agency takes over and they do their work on the accounts that they receive, on the placements that they receive. Along with that, we also have a couple other steps that we do on the collections team side. So if patients end up paying with the clients directly, or if they call us and they're adamant that they want to pay over the phone, today, then we'll take that payment. We'll report that information over to the agencies. And we also get a monthly list of accounts from the collection agencies on patients that have made payments, as well as patients that have paid with the clients as well, as long as it's reported to the agencies. We also handle any additional information requests that we receive from the agencies. Oftentimes, we'll get notifications from the agencies saying that a patient disputed a balance or they disputed the validity of the balance. So we've validate that information. We send over the proof of all the statements that were sent, where the balances are coming from and why and things like that. So it's also a couple of the other responsibilities of the collections team. And then here I just have a quick little listing of some of the agencies that we work with. We primarily work with Waterfall Revenue Group. They're the agency that handles most of the clients that participate with the collections process. But we also have a few others that couple of the other clients from different states work with. So like, for example, Wakefield, Hella Recovery, and George Brown and Associates. So just to summarize all this, why does this information matter? The longer a debt sits unpaid, the lower the chance of collecting. So the workflow is not only important from the point that we get it, but it's also important from the client front end point. If the front office, for example, is not collecting on the balances when the patients come in, they just keep accumulating, and then we get that information on the collections list. And if the balance is super old, then there's a harder chance or a higher likelihood of it not being collected. The overdue patient balances also affect days in AR, so the overall health of the client account can also be impacted because of monies that remain uncollected. And overall, patient balances are still monies that's due to the provider. So if the provider is not able to collect on that, provider's office is not able to collect on it, then it's like the provider essentially didn't get fully paid for their services that they gave the patient. So that's why it matters. And I think that's it for my little presentation. I can't hear you, Kemal.
I'm not used to the mute, so then
Yeah,
I'm muting myself. So, well, thank you for that presentation. So
sure.
the for medical practices, medical facilities, every module is extremely important, but the collection part does have a different impact. One is these are the actual dollar amounts that's not being paid in the full payments. So either partially or fully, these are actual payments to the practices. This is going to impact the financial sustainability of these practices. The cash flow management is important. It can become a nightmare if it's not done correctly, and if you are not able to have these routine monthly or bi-monthly or every 2 months type of collection activities, so then you can clean up the PM system, then if you don't do that, it's going to actually have impact on the workflow with the patients, so with the appointments and other things. And then how much time we spend, how much time practices allocate for these types of expenses, it's going to be really important for practices to follow. Now, there's also legal ramifications. So we have to charge patients the same amount that we are charging to the insurances. We cannot charge them less than Medicare. And if we use this way of just offsetting them, adjusting them without trying to collect these balances, that also has some legal implications. And at the end of the day, this is the practice's income. So today we are going to talk about hospital revenues, net profits, and then when you look at from medical practices, especially from the ambulatory settings, you'll understand that these are extremely important parts of the practice's income. So you can't really afford losing these, and you have to have system in process. And that's why we at United Medical have this module we take it very seriously, and I know your team is working on that on a regular basis. So Muriel, thank you so much for joining us today. So we'll continue covering our other regular updates. Sean is going to join me, so we'll see you again next time.
Thank you, Kemal, for having me. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Mr. Donegan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back.
We have a lot of things to cover today, so we have to kind of start. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, a lot of things to cover. We're going to be going over BRICS, our U.S. world news, focusing on the U.S. economy. Also, we have some updates on the hospital systems here, local to Delaware, and then also what's going on around the country in terms of like protests relating to other global affairs happening. So I think the first one we have loaded up here is the BRICS update.
All right. So BRICS is the Five founders of BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Yep.
It's not new. It's been in place for a while, but it's actually gaining momentum.
Yeah.
And we are gonna try to explain why this is important for us in the United States, what it means for us. And we actually brought this up very early on, before anyone else was paying attention. And one of the reasons is with the financial issues that we were having in this country, which we are not used to. We introduced we didn't introduce it a new item, but we introduced the discussion of global currency, because many people they kind of know these, but then they don't know what it means.
Right.
And understanding US dollar being the dominant currency in the world, and that gives us a lot of power. And that power is not necessarily correlated with exactly how much we produce, what our GDP is, and it's independent from all those, right? So that's why it's important.
Yeah, there's definitely the overlap, obviously with international trade, but the fact that it's the US dollar that the trade's being conducted through, that's what, in a sense, is giving it its power. So what's happening here with the BRICS, just as a general overview, is they are using an alternative currency to carry out their trade, and by doing so, if that threshold is met at such a high level of international GDP and so many more countries adopt that, that would then in turn have the US dollar lose its value. And then that's where you'll see issues that are not impacting the US right now, but we might see in other different countries where inflation can all of a sudden skyrocket unprecedented levels, where you can only, even if you are preparing for it, there's really not much you can do when it's on a global scale that's just out of that country's hands. So that is what is potentially developing at a rate, which, as you mentioned, BRICS did initially come around early 2000, but now as of recent, the last maybe 3-4 years, it's kind of been taken off in popularity.
So this five founders, they represent about 27% of the world's surface areas, 41% of the global population, 25% of the world's total economic output, and the combined GDP of 25 trillion. Now, this was with five initial founders. Now that number is changing. So they invited 6 more countries. Do you know who they are?
I mean, we have countries who are at different stages in the invitation/acceptance process, but you have countries like Argentina, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, like there's a lot of
Egypt,
there's a lot of
Ethiopia.
A lot of different players in the mix that should they adopt, which also there's a couple other ones in Africa, I believe, too, who I'm not sure if they voted against adopting, but I know there's one. I think Argentina initially was.
So Argentina, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and UAE are the ones that are invited, and there are other countries that are planning to invite, but it didn't happen yet.
And also, I believe they have, I won't say the options, but I think that they can apply. So even though they weren't necessarily invited, I think that they can apply to it and say, can you take us in?
Right.
I'm not sure what the acceptance is on that. Obviously, you'd want, if you're a BRICS country, you'd want it to grow. But I guess it kind of depends on what they bring to the table in terms of their international trade volume and kind of where their national debt is in relation already. So you wouldn't want to bring on someone who's just going to be a liability.
Exactly. So then whoever's coming in needs to bring something. Now, we did cover this before, but one of the things that I want to make sure that we can actually, we want to be really good at this, because we want to actually kind of understand what this means for us. In order to do that, we actually started adding these to our own database. So then, because getting a reliable data is not easy. Those the graphs that they are seeing on the video is from our own database, because I believe this is gonna hit us hard, because we already have financial issues, and part of those delays and maybe things are a little bit less impactful for us is because we have the advantage of the global currency. Right now, 88% of the world's transactions are happening in US dollar. So, and this gives us a lot of advantages. So now we wanted to actually examine these countries by their export, by their import, by their GDP, their gas and natural oil productions.
Yeah.
So because they may altogether they may be as big as maybe United States, but how much volume they have in the transactions total that actually can be impactful. Like for example, I think the gas production, if UAE and Saudi Arabia joins, that's going to be more than 43%
Yeah,
of the world. That's huge.
yeah. I mean, they're doing over millions of barrels,
Mhm.
a day. So it's definitely, it has the potential to have a ripple effect down the line, which again, with these types of issues where it's developing, it's not going to be felt, oh, next year, next month, it happens. So now here, it's years, maybe even like a decade down the road where all of a sudden that slow, long-term transition, it's not going to be an overnight impact felt.
Exactly. So one of the other things that we are trying to examine this issue is understanding why this is important for these countries. And so export and import and the ratio of these and what it means in our GDP in each country, that also has a really important message for us. For example, right now, United States, our export is about 2 trillion versus our import is about 3.8. So that's about 189%. This is in 2023. This was 160%, so that went up by 30 percentage point.
Yeah.
Used to be at, our export was at 2 trillion and it was 3.37 in 2022. That number went up to 3.83. So if we are doing the import, that means we are paying, right?
Yeah, you're relying more on outside goods from other countries that are produced there. So you're paying, like you're saying, that transaction fee. But right now it's in the US dollar. So you're not feeling that as much. That's why our imports are able to exceed the exports because we're not feeling that impact as much since it's in US dollar.
Right. And what's also important is I think there are several different factors, but one of the really important factor is this import-export ratio needs to be under 1 for countries to be safer from a financial standpoint, more stable, because then whatever you are demanding outside, it's what's being provided by you, so then it equals out. But now if you have to put more out of your pocket for these transactions, that means your currency is not that great anymore. So this can change the world's equation in the currency, so which will make us more suffering with some of these financial decisions, some of the irresponsible decisions that we have, the government says, right? So the 34 trillion that we cannot afford. We had the comfort of, 88% of the world is in US dollars, but now you are losing when as a country we lose that edge, then you are going to have,
You can't bank on that anymore.
you have to be much more careful. Now, since now we have our own database and we are going to have our own update and then projections. So we want to bring this up issue on a regular basis, and we'll discuss. But this is something that people really need to understand, and they will better understand what we are trying to do. It's like we are a healthcare company. Someone can say, "Why do you care about this? This is going to impact our economy." So that's why. We had our governor last week. It's going to impact his budget, that the state that we live in. So it's not just it's not some isolated issue. It's going to impact everyone. Right.
Yeah.
So anything else we want to add on this?
No, just like kind of wrap up what you're saying there too is also any of the economy updates that we give just related to the US, where you might think it's domestic or even just Delaware, that in turn is not directly, but indirectly related to these bigger, like, schematic changes that we're seeing. It's like you're saying, you might not think because of whatever is happening between the UAE and China, at the end of the day, through that ripple effect, like, oh, why did our taxes go? Why is this now the debt ceiling being raised again? Why are we budgeting billions for this when we can't, like, at the end of the day, you're gonna see that ripple effect coming down. So
And we can actually maybe next time give some specific examples on some of these other countries, how much more they pay for the same products.
yeah, I think that would actually be
Yeah.
a really good eye opener comparison. If you just, let's pick a random country from each continent and just say, what is their trade looking like, and how much
Something that
inflation-
costs 100,000 here may be costing 350,000 in Turkey.
Mhm.
And it's happening today.
Right.
Because they don't have the same advantage that we have. So I think we'll bring up those examples, and then hopefully this is also, one other thing that we want to just remind people that this is going to also impact the way that our foreign policy is, like some of the financial sanctions, and if it's not used properly, which I've been saying that for a long time now, it has to be reasonable. So if we have unreasonable expectations from other countries and we penalize them with decisions just because we are in charge of the currency, it won't work out because they can only put up with it for so
They're gonna
long.
say, yeah, it's such nonsense. Why even tolerate anything for
Right.
that? Yep. Yeah, I think that'll actually have I'm sure foreign policy is gonna be a big debate topic in the November elections too. Different approaches to it.
Yep.
So another thing, maybe you just transition here to talking about the cost of things. So I'll put up two different slides here. This is regarding our state's hospital costs, and then that might help us transition to our second topic with the local Christiana. But the first one we have here is states where the residents need to work the most hours to afford a typical hospital stay. And if you see right here on the list, Delaware is coming in at 4th. So almost 500 hours of work needed based on the average hourly earnings to cover the cost of the hospital stay. So this is not the list that you want to be number one on. You want to be the bottom.
It's the wrong list to be
Yeah.
number one.
So you don't want the medals here. And then just really quickly in turn, we will show you the opposite. So the side that you would want, we'll see, it looks like Alaska's up there number one, having the lowest average hourly earnings relating to hours of work needed to cover the hospital stay. And I think for the next video clip I'll put up here, the reason that you're having this included is talking about the hospital costs and what is being allocated for the certain services that you're receiving in a hospital versus outpatients. Whether that's, like your emergency visits, if it's surgeries that are elective, I'm sure you're going to dive into.
So absolutely, like one of the things, again, the cost of healthcare is one of the main focuses that we have, and one of the reasons that we talk about financial issues, because healthcare cost is not by itself, so it is related to everything else that's happening around us. But one unknown in this country, well-kept secret, is the hospitals. How much money they make, and the meaning of what nonprofit versus for-profit is. And when you look at things that's available publicly, which many people don't even bother to search. So like the porn websites are like the 30% of the top 10 on Google. When people search things, that's 30% of them are porn related sites. But no one is looking for hospital post, and then looking at there's several portals available, compare costs between different hospitals. Medicare has a portal, so people don't bother, but we end up paying more, and we are wasting our time in different things. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be doing that, but this should be also in the top 10 list. So here's why this is important. The numbers are crazy. Like the numbers that we have here, when you hear me saying these, you may think that I'm actually exaggerating this or I'm making these numbers up. Well, the truth is these are real numbers. Our local hospital here, Christiana Care, their last 5 fiscal year available on the public website. It's over $1 billion net profits. So this is a nonprofit hospital in the state of Delaware, the second smallest hospital, fourth most expensive state in healthcare. And their 5-year net profit is 1,013,000,000. Some too many numbers that we are not used, too many zeros that we are not used to.
Sure.
So 1 billion. This is how much Christiana Care, a nonprofit organization, made in the last 5 years. Now, why we are talking about this is because there is a bill that's introduced by Valerie Longhurst. She was going to be one of our guests, but I think she's busy with this bill, and she's the sponsor of the bill. And that bill actually passed today. And what it does is that it actually provides a different layer of it's a cost review committee from the state. I thought it was going to be 5 people, but maybe it could be 7. The reason, and then we discussed this with the governor last week, and then we discussed this before, and we also discussed this in our provider meetings. Part of the issue is this. So we had different reservations on this bill, not because they were trying to control the hospital cost. We want the hospital cost to be controlled, but there is already a mechanism in place which actually is not productive and efficient. It's the expenditure benchmark. So because that's not really effective, so now there's another layer coming in, which is this review board.
Yeah.
And that board passes 21-16 in Delaware. And what really disgusts me is the way that Hospital Association of Delaware, this is the all hospitals, it's a representative of these hospitals, the way that they put this out there, and then they begged all the doctors in Delaware to sign some form saying that this is going to cost everyone $358 million something in a year.
Mhm.
They didn't say how much Christiana Hospital, how much profit they're making, net profit. This is so disgusting. 1 billion from a nonprofit hospital in 5 years. So that's, imagine how much this impacting each individual in the state of Delaware, how costly. Now we support this case with us being, the state being ranked 4 in the nation for the most expensive healthcare system. Why do we need to be the most expensive one in the state of Delaware?
Right. Yeah, we don't necessarily need those fees to be increasing. We want to go the opposite direction there. So a couple questions there, which maybe you can elaborate a little bit. For these types of, whether it's this House bill being pushed, how closely do you think, I mean, obviously we talked about it, but do like our elected officials monitor? Because obviously, like if you're a senator, any type of state representative in the district, whatever, you have so many things that people are saying, oh, we need this, we need to pay attention to this. Like, do you think that there's a sway and that maybe sometimes they don't look at healthcare as closely as they do to other topics?
So
or?
it's a complicated situation because, and I said the same thing to the governor last week. As we are focusing on the hospital systems, one part that we are kind of maybe not bringing up is the insurance companies and the third-party administrators. So if they're not in this picture, now one thing that if I can make this point and help me out here to make sure that our point, the point that I'm trying to make is understood by any other person who's listening.
Sure.
The insurance companies have also regulations, so their administration cost cannot be more than 15% of their total expenses.
Okay.
Now, follow me on this one. So there is a limit of 15%, okay, that they are limited with that percentage, not with dollar amount, not with this or that.
Mhm.
Now, what it tells you is if I have higher expenditure,
Okay.
I can
As long as it's.
allocate more for my expense, for my administration, meaning that I can put more salaries for the CEOs, COOs, CFOs, and everyone in that team. That part is missed. So that's why sometimes insurance companies are not so much motivated to reduce the cost, because if you reduce that total pie,
Right, it's their piece that's.
their
getting
piece,
reduced.
that 15% is going to get smaller.
Value. Yeah.
So if it's 800 million versus 1 billion for them, so they want to have that 1 billion because that's
Sure.
15% of that is 150 million.
Right, you'd rather a
So-
percentage of a bigger home.
Right,
Yeah.
because the percentage doesn't change.
Mhm.
So that's why they are motivated to keep the system in place with the high expenditures. The other thing is how much of the work that they do is actual insured patients. This is the third-party administrators. It's 78% average is the third-party administration, meaning that these insurance companies, they on the surface they look like an insurance company, but they are not.
Right.
They're only 22% insurance company, 78% they're a TPA, third-party administration.
Mhm.
So then because of all these, the issue now, when you look at the entire cost, for example, I'll give you an example on Christiana Hospital again. Christiana Hospital has their employees and their health benefits, and it's a self-funded employer. And then the self-funded employer is needs to have a TPA to run their business. It's very costly. It's like they need to process claims. Who's that?
Yeah.
Highmark. This time, 3 years ago, it was Aetna.
Mhm.
So that means they are in bed with these facilities, these hospital systems
Mhm.
in different ways. So on one hand, they're their clients. On the other hand, they are the facilities that they get services from.
Yeah.
So then they can really do certain things at a certain level. If this slide that you are seeing right now, just the one that just passed, if you look at that, it's coming up. So what you'll see is how much in 1 year. So this 1 billion is not evenly distributed. One more. So this one you'll see the 387. That's the two fiscal years before, right? In 1 year, in those numbers, it's 387 million profit. So like out of that 1 billion,
And how is that?
387.
How is it possible for a nonprofit to profit theoretically? Like,
Well, nonprofit is like we've been talking about it. It's just some cover up for these companies. So do you remember like their former CEO? He was on the payroll for 4 years in a row. After he retired from the position,
yeah,
he was the highest paid employee because they have to post their highest 20 on the payroll, and he was number one after he was gone. So who gave that much money?
Yeah.
Like why? Right? So these are all those irresponsible decisions, financial freedom, and exaggerated charges that hospitals are ruining this country and our people with these numbers. Now, Bay Health is not proportionately it's same if they're like 25% of in total Christian hospitals. So take this at 25%, exception of anything that's related to the religion in business, things don't go right. And St. Francis Hospital being the Catholic hospital, that's the only hospital loses money in the state of Delaware. And that's because they get their donations in a different way. So they don't have the financial stress from the business. So they get their donations from the churches and other places. So this is the situation in the healthcare landscape for the hospital business. So this bill was a desperate attempt to control this outrageous numbers that we are responsible to pay when we are getting these services. And this is not just you and I, but these are people who live under poverty level. There's 30% of the state is on Medicaid. So that's why Valerie made this her goal to make sure that there's another layer, because each layer may not be so efficient, but this is maybe adding a couple others. Perhaps she was looking to see if we can control this. Now, this passed. Now, if you ask my personal opinion, I believe in small governments. So as the government gets bigger, things are kind of out of control. But in this one, things are already out of control. So I didn't see any big harm, because hospitals are not being transparent. They are making every effort to make sure that this expenditure benchmark is not working. That thing works in Maryland and Vermont, and it's not working in Delaware, because Christian Hospital is extremely powerful, and they can actually play the game better than anyone else, because they have $1 billion profits. So if I had $1 billion profit in the last 5 years, I wouldn't be doing this show with you right now.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why Janice Nevin is not doing this show with her hospital, because she financially doesn't have to worry about it. But now they're just freaking out, because they're trying to put this out there as like, oh, this is the worst thing that's happening to people. No, that's not true. That's only controlling these outrageous hospital systems. And it's a desperate effort from the state level.
I think their business strategy.
Yeah.
This is not put into play.
So
I think it's good that, this finally has, like, that's what I was saying, I guess, like, my initial question, like, how much attention is, almost focused or allocated on healthcare concerns, whether it's the financial related to healthcare, or obviously like the quality provided, the accessibility, but like something like this obviously is an indicator that there is enough attention being given that, hey, this is something that needs to have some type of action taken to kind of put a cap on, before. I mean, I guess we could probably more.
But I can tell you, Sean, from what I feel like we need to do right now, because this bill passed. Now, if it was up to us, Anthony Anugu, our director in contracts, he and we talk about this a lot. And one of the things is we wanted this expenditure benchmark to work. So it has to work, because there's a good outcome in different states. So that means we have examples of seeing this working in different places.
Exactly.
Now, but if we didn't have a choice, we want to support this bill. Now, the thing is, we need to get involved a little bit more to make sure that these committee members are qualified people. I mean, even the governor last week, he said at least 5 or 6 times he's not the most expert in this or that, because he's not. And who's going to actually review these budgets? Right now, let me ask you a question. So that the 5-year income net profit list, 1 year is 387 million, the other year it was 73 million in that 5 years. Who's qualified to actually really tell me exactly why that change happened?
Right.
So
it's not
someone who has to have a really high understanding of these financial papers, and not everyone has that. So I'm kind of hoping to see good qualified people in the committee. So that's going to help the state of Delaware, and therefore it's going to help everyone in the state.
So I will kind of transition. There is some topics here in the U.S. world news, which I think that I'll have a separate video to focus on kind of that change that you're saying. If the system isn't working, or if there's something that maybe you don't agree with, you have to voice your opinion, make the issue known. And as we'll see here, I think one of the things in the news as of recent is the U.S. budget and what funds are being allocated to foreign affairs. We know we used to follow the funding going to the billions going to Ukraine. And now we're also seeing the funding going with the Israel-Palestine conflict. And again, I don't think the people of the country are necessarily happy with that, and where those monies are being allocated. So you're seeing, at least on some of the campuses, started at, I think, Columbia, Yale, and
just so like the foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy is not working out, because why do we see our own people caring about this so much? Is because there are a couple different impacts. One is the financial impact. The other thing is just from the humanitarian side of it, like as a person, as a human, we are responsible to see what's out there and what's happening. And because 88% of the world trade is happening with our currency, we do have other responsibilities. So one of them is to make sure that things are fair. Well, at least we tried that, right? So, but it's the execution of it is horrible. What's happening in Ukraine versus what wasn't happening in Tigray from us in Ethiopia. Now with the Israel and Palestine conflict, 33,000 people died in Gaza. 33,000 people since October 2023. So when we had 4 COVID cases in the state of Delaware, we were freaking out and we wanted to close the office and work from home. 4 COVID cases at UD, and we are like, oh my God, 33,000 people died in less than 6 months. And what we see in these protests and why people are unhappy is because of this, because they care. I mean, when you see us supporting someone and they're going and killing kids and women and every other, being there, that's a genocide. And on the same, like while we are doing this, we are trying to tell the world that 100 years ago, Turkey did something to Armenian people. Well, it was the First World War, number one, and they betrayed Turkey, number 2. And that was 100 years ago, and no one actually can prove that happened. But this is happening in front of us with all the cameras, all the live presentations and everything. And now we see the impact of this in our colleges, in our different public places, public officers, officials who are actually protesting this. But the problem that we want to actually discuss this today is just the video that you see right now. The person who's being arrested is a professor at the college. So this is not Turkey. This is not Iran. This is not Afghanistan. This is United States. And the person who is teaching at a college is being arrested for putting her opinion out there. Is that the country that we want to live in? Is that what the freedom of speech is? So when we are criticizing everyone else, is that the way that we need to be taking care of these issues and not understanding the root cause of this problem, and then just trying to shut down people with excessive force? This is going to go really this is going to go out of control. Universities are really dangerous places. I am from one of those colleges in Turkey. My school is very politically involved, and I told you, like, they did so many things when I was a student there because they thought I was not left enough. So then, I got in trouble in so many times, and because they can coordinate very quickly and they can put their protests out there very quickly. And this is now what's happening in the United States. And that is concerning. And if we don't do something soon, I'm worried that this can become a bigger problem in the next couple of weeks. And we don't want to have, we want to live in the way that we did all these years in a peaceful way. So this is gonna disrupt the way that we live day to day. So now those colleges, a lot of people, their kids are in those colleges. So they're going to worry about them. So it's not just the college campus is happening. If someone is being killed or injured, that's going to create a lot of outrage. So I'm just, again, worrying about this so that we can see these warnings before it's too late.
Yeah, I think another thing too is if things were like super great, like say like our economy is really as awesome as like people are maybe claiming it is, I think that maybe the unrest level wouldn't be as like severe as you're seeing, where if there's other issues upsetting people, it means that they're already like riled up, like, hey, like I mean, we look at just the interest rates on like rent skyrocketing, like if you're trying to get a home at like an 8% interest rate, like there's other things that are already causing you like day-to-day hardships. And then you're seeing, for example, like all this funding going to other countries while there's issues here that obviously need to be addressed still. I'm sure that's not gonna help calm anyone down or, you know, give them peace of mind. So that's
So, we use ChatGPT time to time. So I asked ChatGPT to give the similarities between US and Turkey and also the differences on a couple of the topics. So one is the freedom of speech. And then it listed similarities, but then differences. Freedom of speech in the US is a constitutionally protected. So what's happening in the colleges right now? How is that protected if you are arresting the college professor saying that what we are doing there is wrong? So this is wrong.
Well, I
Right.
don't know what she did to be allowed.
Nothing. She didn't harm anyone.
There.
Well, no, what we see is what can she do, right? She didn't have guns. She didn't have a knife, weapon, anything. She's there protesting. I'm not a big fan of those protesters, not just those, any protesters, because I think there's a different way of putting your opinion out there. Because every time you have those types of gathering, that can actually become a big dangerous traps for people. And I would never be there, but I would still show my protest in a different way. But she's there. But if she chooses that, and if we are saying that freedom of speech, so this AI system saying that it's protected, but it's not, and then it's saying that it's not protected in Turkey. First, that's wrong, because in Turkey it's also protected, but how we are executing is now is same.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, if you look at these protests versus back in like 2020, the other peaceful protests of certain groups.
They weren't so they weren't so peaceful.
People maybe weren't arrested there.
I mean, these are happening in the college campuses, so it can't be. If we say that we are better than anyone else, then we need to see that. But if you are acting just the same way that you would act if the government of Iran in these types of protests, then how are we different from anyone else? That's the responsibility that we need to take. Right. So that is like just like as a CEO, I have certain responsibilities, and I cannot act in certain ways in just because I'm representing this company. So my responsibility is more than someone who's not the CEO for this company, because I represent the brand here, right? So if you have United Medical jacket on, you can do certain things, and you have to be more careful because now you are saying that you are part of United Medical. So this is the same thing. So when this is happening in our country, if we don't have a way of controlling this in a better way and putting everyone in danger, it can actually go out of control, John. Like this is how the stuff happened right after. I think you and I we were talking about the Vietnam, right?
Kent State.
Those protesters started small and then got out of control. We don't want to be at that point. That means we need to see why this is happening. So that means some changes must happen, and that's actually we've been saying that for a long time. Right. So I think that's all I have from my side. I don't know what else you have.
Yeah, saying, I mean, overall, I think like obviously you have to be delicate in these types of things because obviously, like you're saying, it's constitutional right. You want people to be able to, voice their opinion, but also in like the proper manner. So like if, for example, like sort of vandalism or other types of crimes start getting blended in with that, that's when all of a sudden you'll see like, will they call in and like whatever type
so like just so that you and I are on the same page. I'm with you on that. When these things happens, because it can go out of control, the police need to do certain things. But when it happens in other countries, when you are putting financial sanction on those countries because of the way that they treated these protesters, you cannot do the same thing when it happens here. So you are criticizing when it happens in other countries. When it's here, you do worse than what they are doing. How are we different than Russia to deal with those types of protesters if we are just beating up our own people and arresting the college professors?
So theoretically, someone could put a sanction on us then.
Right.
But,
So, I mean, we are like, I mean, we are on the same page. I think these protesters, I think those colleges should be able to have a different form of these protests, and then they can still have the same impact, because these gathering again can be dangerous for other people who are not participating. And also those police, like they're innocent people, so they are not super
Right,
powerful. All they have is a gun. If someone is using the gun better than they do, they're in danger.
right.
So, but the point though is like being in this place right now because we have done certain things. We made bad decisions in our foreign policy, and we wasted a lot of money in different places in a wrong way. And I think this protest is coming from that. So if we change those policies and make those updates, I think people are going to react to that.
Yeah, an upstream
Right.
adjustment that we have to deal with what happens down. Yeah.
So we'll see. Well, I guess that's all we have for this week.
Yeah,
Do we have more?
we're bringing it right to the 3 p.m. bell. Nah, I mean, that's what we wanted to touch on. Obviously, some of these items will be followed up on. Some of them, I know we didn't even get to, say, like Trump's trial. That's a whole other issue.
Next week we can actually get into that.
But yeah, there's a bunch of other updates, and obviously if the one bill just passed today, I'm sure there's going to be updates in the coming week of what that means in relation to the healthcare and the state. So,
All right. Well, thank you everyone for following us and watching us, and we'll be back next week. And we have our Bariatric Friday premium video is going to be playing now, and we'll be back next week. Thank you. Bye bye.